Am I the asshole for not grounding my son? My son, 17 male, just got sent to stay with me and my wife by my son's mother. This all happened underneath a cloud it took me a while to get the details on. There was a conflict between him and his stepsister, 16 female. Admittedly the kid did something he should not have. I don't think it would count as criminal, because he's underage and all. His mother and stepdad think it's a way bigger deal than I do. I agree it's a problem, but it's the kind of dumbass thing that teenagers do. It wasn't violent, and it's not like anyone outside the family except one of his friends even knows anything about it. I'm not going to detail what it was here. His mother thinks he needs to be punished to the nines. Kept inside all summer, no friends, maybe even moving schools next year. He and his stepsister go to the same school but aren't in the same year. I think he needs a good talking to by an older male figure about how to respect women, but I don't think a slap on the wrist is going to make a difference. Now my ex is angry at me and saying all kinds of things that aren't true about me as a man. I think if she sends our kid to me, it's up to me how I handle misbehavior. Am I the asshole? ETA. 1. People are saying the thing he did is important. So, stepsister caught him taking a picture of her at home, not in a compromising position in any way. It came out that he has taken a few pictures of her, one being her watching a movie, and shared them with a friend. They were having an online conversation about finding her attractive. 2. I agree that shouldn't happen and he needs to not do that again. I just also think it's the kind of dumbass thing a teen boy does that needs to be corrected. 3. The point of conflict with my ex is how that needs to be corrected. I think he needs to have a good talking to by someone he respects. Maybe that person isn't me, though I'll also express that I think he's wrong to have done it. I don't think grounding or moving schools is proportional or helpful. That's the point of conflict. Not whether I think it's all fine. And #X200B. Update. Guys, I am stupidly lucky. Also stupid. Fully accepting that I was being too soft and brushing off what could have been really worrying behavior. As it turns out, it's only a bit worrying. I took to heart what people kept saying here, that I needed to look at the pictures myself. When I got home from work, I confiscated my son's phone and looked at the pictures. At first I was just relieved they weren't worse, because everyone here really got into my head about how they must have been really perverted, but it was just 4 pictures of his stepsis hanging out and not doing much. In one of them, I think she knew he was taking the picture because she was making a funny face at him. So I read the chat itself, including the part where he talked about how cute she is. He also said she's really smart and is into science, which is true from what I know, but also isn't something my kid normally cares about. Having read his really dumb conversations with his friend, I could put together what was actually happening. My kid was trying to convince his friend to meet his stepsister and ask her out. Don't get me wrong, he went about this really badly. But at least he wasn't actually creeping on her in her sleep or something. I also texted his mother for her screenshots to check he hadn't deleted anything. As far as I can tell he didn't. I finally sat down and got the story out of Dean, especially the weird thing about him sneaking pictures, and he said it's because his friend doesn't like Instagirls, and his stepsis has a tendency to wear lots of makeup and edit her pictures. But the two have a lot in common and he was trying to show her in her natural habitat. I know. The two of us had the start of what will be multiple conversations about that whole mess. Kid says mother plus stepdad plus stepsister freaked out so much that nobody would listen to him about why he was taking a picture of her. I'll call his mum and talk about it more tomorrow. And yes, cheers for all the shouting, I am the asshole and kid is an idiot. You are the asshole. He took pictures of his stepsister without consent and sent them to his friend. If that weren't awful enough, he also made vulgar comments about it. You seem to think it's no big deal that your son is behaving like a creep. Which immediately calls your character in question. Punish your son properly now, or watch him turn into an awful human being. Whilst you're doing that, take a good long look at yourself in the mirror. Info. So what did happen? That's kinda important to make a judgment. A picture of her watching a movie? Come on? That's not it. Too vague to judge. It really comes down to the offense. Men deserve nothing. Am I the asshole for embarrassing my wife and kids with my old slightly beat-up car? I, M44, have never really been materialistic. I always buy things with the intention of getting the absolute most out of them before getting something new to replace said item with. I do this with my electronics, my shoes, my clothes, and my car. For reference, I drive a 2006 Kia Optima. It has very high mileage and does have a few dings and scratches, but aside from that, it still works fine. My relatives, friends, and co-workers usually joke about how my car does not suit me, and my wife, F44, has urged me a few times to replace it, but I've always insisted that I will once it stops working. The issue started last week when we took my wife's, significantly newer, car to the shop to get it repaired. Because of this, my wife is no longer able to drop off our kids, F14 and M16, at school. As such, for the past week, I've been dropping off my kids and then my wife at work before driving to work myself. My kids have been asking me to drop them off far from the main entrance of their school so they can walk the rest of the way because they don't want to be seen in this car. While I did comply the first time, I refused the next time, stating that they shouldn't put too much value into the opinions of other people. I don't think my words got through, as they will typically look around a lot, wait for fewer people to be around, and then rush towards their school building. Yesterday, I picked up my wife from work. Her car is still in the garage. She was standing in front of the building she works at with a few of her co-workers. I greeted them, and my wife got in. Once we started driving, she told me that I needed to get rid of my car ASAP. She told me that it was becoming too embarrassing for her, and our kids, to get in, especially when other people were around. I said something along the lines of how my car works perfectly fine mechanically and that getting something new didn't make much financial sense. She then said that she'd start taking an Uber until her car is ready if I don't replace mine. I just said that if she thinks that's best, she can proceed to do that. We started up the conversation again over dinner and my kids agreed with their mother. I told them that I still think it's premature and unnecessary. Am I the asshole? Edit: for those wondering, we do live in a higher income area. I work as a university professor while my wife is a lawyer. Update: I wrote on my family's group chat that I was considering having the car painted and having its dings buffed out. My wife and daughter didn't like the idea very much. Son hasn't responded yet. I spoke with my wife later on the phone and she was adamant that the car had to go. She said it was old and unsightly and made her and our daughter uncomfortable. The fact she mentioned our daughter and the comments I'm reading about teen life makes it starting to make the idea of a new car more acceptable to me. Edit: 2 to saves those joining the search in the comments. My car's condition is almost 257k miles, some dings and scratches, somewhat faded paint, interior's in good condition with a few cracks in the leather, mechanically the car's in good shape. My wife's car is 2020 Audi SQ5. Update: 2 spoke with my wife again after once I got home. She did reiterate that she worries that our daughter might get teased about getting dropped off in my car. She also did mention that she worries about my safety in the car, especially when I drive at night with it. Lastly, she mentioned that since me and her are both minorities in a predominantly white area, having an old car may make people stigmatize us. Not the asshole. Your wife is an adult and should be able to cope with your old car. As far as your kids are concerned, you should drop them off where they request. It appears that you've completely forgotten what peer pressure in school is like. Not the asshole. Your wife is teaching your children a horrible mindset, and I'll just say a 2006 Kia isn't that old. It's stupid as shit to buy a new car when the one you have works just fine. Your wife is being judgmental and materialistic, and also passing that on to your kids. Let them be embarrassed. Hold your ground on this one until you actually want a new car for yourself. Hell, if you take care of it long enough, give it to your kid when they're of driving age and maybe they'll appreciate having a car at all. Not the asshole. I think it's completely fine to drive it, if it's safe. I think your children and wife need to appreciate that you even have 2 cars. Maybe your older one should start some summer job or something to realize what it means to make and to spend money. I need more info. How beat up is this car actually? Do you have a picture? I just don't know of anyone that would freak out this much over dings and scratches on a car, unless you live in a really fancy neighborhood. Am I the asshole? Did I ruin my friend's pregnancy announcement? Recently my group of friends and I went bowling for one of our friends' birthday celebrations. We are all quite a close-knit group of friends and share a lot together. I am quite close with one friend, Emma F39. Her and her partner Dean M40 have been trying to conceive for 2.5 years now. I usually see Emma several times a week, but over the past month I have only seen her once, which is very unusual for us. We all talk every day in the group chat though to keep up with each other. I mentioned to my partner Ryan that I had a strange suspicion that Emma was pregnant. I just had a gut instinct and little things weren't adding up. Not drinking when she would usually, missing out on plans she'd usually attend, etc. Nothing major. But my gut was telling me she definitely was. Anyway, while we were at the bowling alley, Emma and I were left alone at some point. I just turned to her and said, "I need to ask you something, are you pregnant?" She hesitated for a moment and admitted she was, but her and Dean weren't planning on telling anyone yet as she was only 4 weeks and she has a family history of miscarriages. I said congratulations and said I wouldn't tell anyone, and that was the end of that. Our friends shortly returned from the bar and the bowling continued. To my surprise though, while we were out for dinner in the evening, Dean declared they had an announcement to make. He announced Emma's pregnancy and everyone was so happy and congratulated them, etc. etc. The rest of the celebrations went well and I even spoke to her a lot throughout the night and she was completely fine with me. The next day I messaged Emma several times to see how she was doing, what she was up to and how she was feeling. She ignored me for 10 hours before replying despite texting in the group chat, that I'm also a part of, throughout the day. In the evening I'd sent a text asking if she was annoyed at me for anything as I didn't know when she was ignoring me. A couple hours later she replied saying she'd been so busy, despite regularly messaging the group chat throughout the day and knowing I'd see it. She kept dodging my question and repeating, we weren't going to tell everyone yet. I asked her over and over if she was annoyed at me, but again, she kept the same response. I asked her why she didn't just tell me no and tell us all when they originally planned to. Her response was, because I don't lie, despite saying she was too busy to speak to me. And I could have just not asked. I just said okay, congratulations again, and it was left like that. I don't understand why she acted like this as I didn't make them tell everyone. I'm sure she'd be able to trust I wouldn't tell anyone as I had a baby 3 years ago and got everyone to keep it hush hush up until 12 weeks. Ryan thinks I'm not the asshole, but I'm not sure if he's just being biased. Just wanted an outsider's perspective. Am I the asshole? Did I ruin the announcement? Did I deserve to be ignored? Edit. Emma and Dean agreed together to tell everyone, but Dean was the one who announced. Emma and I are really close and she regularly keeps me updated with her fertility journey, doctor's appointments, tests, etc. Edit 2. What would be the best way for me to approach this with Emma? Would it be better to apologize through text or in person? I suffer really badly with anxiety, so I'm just nervous about causing a public scene. If she was really mad at me, but don't want it to seem like I'm unbothered if I do it through text. You are the asshole. I don't think it's really ever appropriate to ask someone if they're pregnant. Even if it seemed pretty obvious, you should have waited for her to tell you. I don't quite think you forced her hand, but you should nt have said anything. Pretty surprised by some of the response here, so free public service announcement for all. Do not ask women if they are pregnant, ever. If they want you to know, they will tell you. If they haven't told you, it's none of your business. Mild Esh. You shouldn't have asked. You didn't need to ask, you wanted to, and you kind of cheated yourself out of a lovely announcement from your friend. You definitely shouldn't have pestered her via text and comparing lying about not being pregnant and her reason for not replying to you as odd. It's not even in the same ballpark. She shouldn't have told everyone if she didn't want to. That wasn't on you at all, you didn't make her do that. And #X200B. Edit. I didn't finish an entire sentence. You are the asshole. You don't ask someone if they are pregnant, ever. If they want you to know, they will tell you. Gentle, you are the asshole. You inserted yourself somewhere and made things awkward, then pestered the friend repeatedly the next day instead of giving her space. This makes it seem like your thoughts only related to yourself and how things affected you, with no regard for her privacy or feelings. Am I the asshole for screaming at my husband for burning dinner? I cook almost every night for myself and my partner, other than when we get takeaway. I enjoy cooking, and I'm quite good at it, so it isn't a massive burden. The last couple of weeks have been very hard for me. My uncle was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and my dad needed emergency surgery, as well as a slew of other big stressors. I think I'm suffering from reactive depression and I cried most of today. My partner offered to make dinner because of how I was feeling, so I gave him a recipe which was very straightforward and didn't need much technique. I'm relaxing on the couch when every fire alarm in the house goes off. So I run to the kitchen and he has a pan of black salmon streaming smoke. I tell him to take it outside and put the pan on the bricks because of the billowing smoke, but he stands there and argues with me saying, the salmon is still good. Eventually I yell at him to go outside with it and he does. Then I run around opening windows and flushing the house with a towel. Eventually we have to get the ladder and remove the smoke alarms to stop them. I then strip the salmon of the burnt exterior, leaving about 1/3 of the fish edible. And we eat that with the now cold vegetables. I got pretty pissed while I was trying to salvage the dinner and called him incompetent and raised my voice. I feel like I do so much more mental labor and I can't trust him to take anything on because shit like this always happens. I don't think it's weaponized incompetence, just plain old carelessness. I think he really did want to do a good job tonight, but he still messed up and left me more stressed out than if I cooked it myself. He thinks I was way out of line and was screaming at him for a genuine mistake. Am I the asshole for being a bit of a jerk about his mistake? I feel like I probably am, but it also feels weirdly justified to me in the context of our relationship as a whole. Edit. Thanks everyone for the input so far. I apologized for yelling because that was uncalled for and an asshole move. He accepted my apology. I mentioned maybe he could start cooking more in general and improve his skills. He said to just ask him to and he will. I think it's also clear there is probably more to unpack about our dynamic in general, because I think I have some pent-up resentment about the mental load I take on. But we can have that conversation together on a less heated night. Edit 2. Okay, this is a much bigger issue than I originally realized. Thank you to everyone who shared comments about unfair division of labor, mental load etc. I've done some reading this morning and it's pretty clear my partner does weaponize his incompetence and I don't know how to feel about it. It just sucks. I do all the planning and organizing for our lives and he does some of the execution, but often needs direction. I'm an exploration geologist and when I'm away in the field, I cook meals before I go and freeze them for him. I always thought of it as an act of service and an expression of love. But I think I'm realizing it's also because I know he can't feed himself. And I just don't know what to do with that information. I feel like I'm suffering from chronic overwhelm and the emotional distress of the last few weeks has been a breaking point. I'm just not sure how to navigate this and improve our relationship. Because again, I think that will fall on me. I've been looking into couples counseling this morning. Ask him to and he will. That was you asking, wasn't it? No, you are not the asshole. It is understandable that you were upset given the mental and emotional stress you have been under as of late. It is also understandable that you felt very frustrated by your husband's lack of understanding of the situation. While you may have been a bit jerky in your attempt to explain the situation to your husband, it does not make you an asshole. Your reaction was understandable given the situation and therefore you are not at fault. Your edit makes me cringe. You shouldn't have to ask. He's not your child. He's an adult and he needs to take initiative, not wait for mommy to tell him what to do. Not the asshole. What the hell was he doing while cooking? Salmon doesn't just burn that quickly. You would have had to have walked off and left it unattended for it to be that burnt. He said to just ask him to and he will. This just reinforces your point about mental labor. He'll work on his cooking skills, but only if you ask him to.